Who is the biggest beneficiary for the Texans with Nico Collins sidelined this weekend? How hard do you really need to think about not playing Sam Darnold in the FFPC Playoff Challenge number 2? And who are the targets and fades you need to know about as you gun for a $100,000 grand prize with the FFPC in the divisional round? Plus, live from the VSiN studios, host and analyst Brad Taylor hops aboard to give you his advice on what the 100K winning lineup is going to look like in the FFPC Playoff Challenge 2 and much more. We've got a great show for you. Ferrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than these lessons.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Greetings and salutations to all of you Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Welcome into the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ferrell Elliott. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to tell you how the Broncos pass catchers should figure into your rosters this weekend, as well as a super pivot for the Rams in the FFPC Playoff Challenge number 2. We'll also be joined by VSiN radio host and analyst Brad Taylor to chat about the Seahawks backfield, Colston Loveland, and so much more. If you want to connect with us on X, please do so at hsffhour, at Eric Balkman, and of course, check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, located conveniently on the interwebs at KFFSC.com. You can also post on our Facebook page, facebook.com/hsffhour. You can also email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, now is the time to send them in. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, X posts, and emails in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the show. Shout out to our audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, and of course our producer and mutual friend Rob. In case you didn't know, we have one final contest over at the FFPC that features a six-figure grand prize. Ladies and gentlemen, the FFPC Playoff Challenge 2 will close promptly at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, which means precious time remains to get your entries in. I always say this, no matter what happened to you this fantasy season, if it was a bad fantasy season, if it was a good fantasy season, if it was a great fantasy season, none of that means anything this weekend, because even if you had the worst fantasy season ever, it could turn into the greatest fantasy season ever if you win this $100,000 grand prize. It's all you're going to care about. What's great about this is it's super easy to put the lineups together. There's no draft. There's no salary cap. There's no convoluted rules. Pick your 8 players, and that's it. 1 player per team. If you want Josh Allen, you can't have James Cook. If you want Jackson Smith and Jigba, you can't have Kenneth Walker III. Win $100,000 with a $200 entry fee. Win $25,000 with just a $35 entry fee. Sign up now. myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live by clicking that notification bell. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring on the co-host with the most, my partner in crime, Mr. Ferrell Elliott. Ferrell, happy divisional round eve to you, sir.
How are you, partner?
I'm excited.
Should we go ahead and just get it out there? Should we go ahead and talk about it?
Well, listen, I'm going to tell you this right now. I am very excited for this weekend of football.
No, we got to go back.
Despite the Packers not being involved in this weekend, kudos to the Bears. They made the plays they needed to make in that game. And I think I brought this up on the show several times. My father, when I was a kid, told me that this divisional round weekend of the NFL, he said it's the best weekend of pro football. You have the 8 best teams, or at least the 8 remaining teams, gunning for a Super Bowl championship. We have no point spread higher than, I want to say, 7.5. We should see some good football this weekend, Ferrell.
Yeah, your father's a very, very wise man, and this is the greatest weekend of football. Unfortunately, I'm going to be on an airplane Sunday afternoon, so I don't like that. There were two tragedies in the Bears and the Packers. The Packers let it get away. The other tragedy was that, and we'll get more into this with Brad, and I am so thrilled to have Brad here on the show. I advised our listeners not to get involved with tight end Coastal Loveland, to go somewhere else. And then I just realized that even though he 58 passes and 5 touchdowns through the season, in the last 3 games, including last week's playoff game, he's been targeted 38 times. And we were told he would play better later in the year. And I said we could do no harm last week. and we harmed people. And I'm over it. Going to try to do better this week.
When I had a terrestrial radio show, Ferrell, I had a guest.
That's not that. Those like you rode the dinosaur to the radio station.
It was way back in the day. Yeah. Okay. And I would have this guest on. It was a Milwaukee Bucks analyst, and the Bucks were happening to go through a pretty rough part of their season where they had gotten blown out 3 times in a row. And I had this guy on, and I said, well, clearly it can't get any worse. And he said, Balky, don't you ever say that. And it did get worse for the Bucks. And I will never say, no matter what I'm talking about, fantasy football, pro basketball, life, I will never say it can't get any worse, because now I know it clearly can get worse. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it tonight. It's going to get better from here on out. I want to bring up the Seahawks because I think I don't know if there was big news this week in the NFL for these 8 remaining teams. It was probably this report out of Seattle. Mike McDonald, the Seahawks head coach, said that he's, quote, really optimistic Sam Darnold is going to be able to play in the divisional round against the 49ers. He said that there's a possibility that this injury might limit Sam Darnold physically, but he's also saying that Darnold himself is confident he's going to be able to operate normally. He was very nebulous when it came to his responses when he was asked specifics about the injury and how it's going to affect Sam Darnold's play. Listen, Sam Darnold needs all the help he can get, clearly, and anything that's going to hamstring him even more is going to be problematic. This question, we'll get into Sam Darnold later on in the show, Ferrell, but I think most people for the playoff challenge too are looking at rostering Jackson Smith and Jigma. Maybe a few people based on the data we saw from Fantasy Mojo, fantasymojo.com, at Fantasy Mojo on X, where we always get this data from. We saw a handful of people roster Kenneth Walker III, as well as Zach Charbonnet last week too. Mm-hmm. So I think the question here is, are you at all nervous about, especially if you're rostering JSN, with Darnold, operating at less than 100% physically? We know his limitations in this offense and him as a quarterback. And I wonder if this is enough for you to say, like, hey, maybe I should look at this ground game with Seattle as a pivot off of Smith and Jigba, given that Seattle wins with their rushing offense and with their defense, especially this season. You can make the case that they're going to get to the Super Bowl based on how good that defense is going to be. If Darnold is now limited a little bit more physically, I don't know. Maybe Charbonnet and Walker aren't the easy fades they were before.
Yeah, Balky, and you're presenting some opportunities for our event here at the FFPC, their divisional round. Look, yardage for Darnold for the year, 4,100 yards. Mm-hmm. Yardage for JSN, close to 1,800 yards, 17 and change. This is a stat that I heard. So he's 45% of the air yards for this offense. He's everything for this quarterback. You can't really. I don't know how you. The only thing that's going to get this player for not being a huge difference maker in this contest, and I think the only way you can win is by rostering another player, is if this player gets injured. That's my thoughts on it. It's a no-brainer to roster this player.
And I think you're right. And I think most people will be doing that. Now, I can't remember if I brought this up last week or not, but I'm going to bring it up tonight. As far as how that roster ownership worked for the Seahawks in the playoff challenge last week, the 500K challenge, Charbonnet was owned in actually Charbonnet and Walker were each owned in about 2% of leagues. Smith and Jigba 87% of leagues, and that's how people handle it. I would imagine it's probably going to be like that again. However, with only 8 players in this contest, you do need to be different somewhere. I would expect that those 2% for Charbonnet and Walker are going to be a little bit higher this week, regardless of the Darnold injury.
Yeah.
Speaking of injuries, Ferrell, Nico Collins not going to be playing against the New England Patriots Sunday afternoon. He is in the concussion protocol, did not get out of it in time, and the Texans ruled him out today. Did not practice at all this week, and Christian Kirk obviously had a big week. I mentioned this last night on FFPC Insider Access with Pat Fitzmaurice. Kirk was good before the Collins injury. He was good after the Collins injury, like Mike McDermott in Rounders, right? When Worm shows up and they get caught cheating, and Mike McDermott's like, look, I was winning before this guy even got here. Christian Kirk was crushing it before Nico Collins even got concussed in last week's game, right? So I think we have to take a long look at Christian Kirk. Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, obviously Xavier Hutchinson still factoring into the Texans passing attack. I still don't know how you have your quarterback fumble 5 times and win a playoff game by 24 points, but that's what happened with Houston. You go into this New England game without a true number 1 wide receiver. Ferrell, this is something we're going to talk to Brad about as well. Do you have any feeling on, is Christian Kirk the guy that you want to roster from Houston? Is it Dalton Schultz perhaps? Or are you picking a big game or maybe a big postseason from one of these Texans rookies out of Iowa State in Noel or Higgins?
I really like Higgins. We've been Higgins fans since last summer, and that's probably what I'm going to do. And I think, who's the big beneficiary of this? The Pats defense. Do you have to take a Texans? Could now be the question.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to.
You have to, but the question is which one? Honestly, there will be people that will be like, oh, I got to take their defense. You can't play the defense this week. It's got to be a skill position player. Could be Woody Marks. I can't imagine a lot of people would be going with Nick Chubb, but I'll be fascinating once the lineups lock here in what would it be? About 19 hours, a little over 19 hours. Be very interested to see how people handle the Houston Texans this weekend, as they are 3.5-point underdogs, or is it 4.5-point underdogs to the New England Patriots this week? It is, they're 3-point underdogs. So they've tightened it up a little bit. So 3 points. Okay. I want to shift before we get our total focus on the 100K playoff challenge 2 with the FFPC. I want to talk about 2 other players that I think that are not in the playoffs, but I know this first guy holds a dear spot in your heart, Ferrell, and that's Michael Pittman. The Athletics' James Boyd, who covers the Indianapolis Colts for that publication, believes Michael Pittman, quote, appears to have 2 options: restructure his contract or play somewhere else in 2026. Now, after the last game of the season, Michael Pittman, when he was meeting with the press, kind of talked about like how this was probably his last game as a Colt. He has a $29 million cap hit this coming year. And if the Colts decide to cut him, that's going to free up $24 million in cap space. He is going to be 29 next year. And it's certainly possible that they could trade him. I would imagine that that's a possibility on the table for the Colts right now. What do you make of Michael Pittman coming up this year, Ferrell, knowing that he is not over the hill, but certainly not a spring chicken anymore, and he probably will have a new head coach, new OC, new quarterback, new offense to learn prior to the start of the 2026 season?
Yes, and that's true about 25% of the league. So you might want to go to one of those places where everyone's going to be. It's a fresh start for everyone. Pittman, it's just one of my all-time favorite players, and I would love seeing him in a change of venue. I personally hope that he ends up with a quarterback that has a little bit more seasoning, perhaps, than some of the quarterbacks that he's had at Indianapolis. He's benefited from the fact at Indianapolis that he plays in a dome, plays on a carpet. That works well for him, and so that could be a situation for him. You take a team, we just talked about Seattle. Perhaps that would be a place for him. A place where you've got to get some balance. Do we expect this receiver, JSN, to catch 1,800 yards next season? The whole league's going to work on taking that player. So I think it's a great offseason for Pittman, and I love the way our writer here has covered possibly every outcome that there possibly could be. And,
right.
He's covering all the bases, so he can claim he's going to be right about it.
New Orleans, I think, would be interesting for Pittman next year too. Playing alongside Chris Olave and Tyler Shuck, that'd be interesting. We'll see. Much more to come on that situation. We have Brad Taylor standing by here. The last thing I want to get to before we go to the VSiN studios to connect with him, Patrick Mahomes stated that his doctor told him he could be ready to play week 1 of the season. This was on the Chiefs' official website. Mahomes said that his rehab is going great. That the Chiefs told him he's hitting all the checkpoints that he needs to as far as strength and range of motion goes. And he says during OTAs, he expects to be able to do some things there, which is good. He says he's hoping to do a lot in training camp. This is positive news. I would expect nothing else to be coming out of Patrick Mahomes' mouth and out of the Chiefs organization. If they're not saying this, or if they're saying anything less than this, I have serious questions. But I think the serious question I have here, Ferrell, I think some people, myself included, were ready to downgrade him with best ball drafts ready to get underway here in the next week or two. Now I'm thinking like, well, maybe I shouldn't downgrade him as much. I still am skeptical he's ready for week 1, but perhaps he's going to be ready earlier than we think. And it's not like he's a receiver or a corner or a running back. Like, he's a quarterback. And I think that as far as coming back from ACL injuries, quarterbacks are not expected, with apologies to quarterbacks, they're not expected to do a lot of the sudden change of and cuts that running backs, receivers, corners, so on and so forth are expected to do. And it's Mahomes, who he's kind of a freak anyway as well. We still know what's going on with Travis Kelce. We don't know what the Chiefs are going to do in the draft. We don't know what's going on with Rashee Rice and his potential suspension as well. But I think this is good news, and perhaps I'm not downgrading Mahomes as much as I thought I was going to be after this report, Ferrell.
So Patrick Mahomes as your best ball third string quarterback, Bucky? You think you can get that?
I think he will be drafted in the top 15.
Okay.
And maybe that's not even like a hot take at all, but I just feel like, the way that he was performing earlier this season, how much he was running, he was doing stuff with his legs that we hadn't seen maybe ever in his NFL career. And now you get, as long as positive reports keep coming out like this, then I think he's going to creep up. And the fact that his doctor's saying he could be ready for week 1, I mean, he's looking like kind of a bargain.
And he'll be at Steinberg's Super Bowl party, and they can all put those microphones in his face and ask him that same question. He might skip that just to not,
I think that one of the most fascinating offenses we'll be watching for as we start draft season here shortly is what's going to happen with Kansas City. I saw a mock draft that they take Jeremiah Love in the first round too. Wow. And so he's finally get a running back on that offense, Love and Mahomes. Boy, it could be a quick turnaround for Kansas City in 2026. Let's get into tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen. I want to bring him on right now. He's a multi-league champion in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. He also hosts The Bottom Line with Brad Taylor on ESPN Radio Lexington. He hosts Live Bet Saturday on the Vegas Sports Information Network and is the author of the sports gambling book Side Hustle. Please welcome, live from the VSiN studios in glorious Franklin, Kentucky, Mr. Brad Taylor. Brad, good evening. How are you?
Doing well. As you can tell, fellas, you are looking live at the Circus Sportsbook here in Franklin, Kentucky. A very sparse crowd here tonight, but they will be packed house here tomorrow for Kentucky-Tennessee basketball, and then, of course, the NFL playoffs. So a little quiet here tonight, but it's the calm before the storm, as we like to say in the business, as you like to say. But no, it's great here, and looking forward to this, fellas. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you aboard. Certainly everybody needs to rest up with what's going to be a big day, not only in Kentucky, but across the nation tomorrow, with 2 big games Saturday and then 2 more big games on Sunday as well. Brad, before we get into fantasy football and start talking to you about some of these players that we're looking at this weekend, tell us what you're specifically doing over at VSiN right now.
At VSiN, I host a show along with my co-host Will Hill called Live Bet Saturday. And what we do is I'm looking at a big bank of televisions here in the studio. We kind of watch the games. We watch the live lines, how they're the live lines change as we go all the time. And what would you do now? Because let's say a football game tomorrow, let's say the Niners come out and score the first touchdown of the game. Would you now find some value on Seattle now because that line's not going to be 7 or 7.5? It's going to be below that. Is now the time? Is that a good time to maybe live bet on Seattle and that? But yeah, it's live bet Saturday. We're looking at live lines, previewing the night games, and it's sports talk from a gambling perspective here at the Circa, and I love it. It's great stuff, and it keeps you on your toes. And yeah, there's a big, huge market, as you guys know, for sports gambling out there. And we are quenching the thirst here at VSiN.
It is a beautiful thing, Brad, that you are that you take me back in memory lane. And this is how I pictured you from day one. This is where I pictured you from the moment that you expressed your ambition to be like Balky and be a broadcast professional. And it is a great thing to see you. You look wonderful. I want to, full disclosure to the listeners, on February 2nd, 2014, Balky, 2014, February 2nd, was the Super Bowl Sunday that that Brad Taylor accompanied me and a couple other friends to Las Vegas for the Super Bowl. We spent the weekend out there for the Super Bowl. And this was another, as you recall, Brad, who were the two teams?
Broncos, Seahawks. I remember that
Broncos, Seahawks. And Brad didn't join us for dinner on Friday night when we discussed a lot of who we thought was going to win. And we all came out with the losing side except Brad. What we had essentially, Balky, as they say from the great movie, we had a failure to communicate. But Brad would sit there with a winning ticket, and that's you picked winners your whole life in this world. Now tonight, what we're trying to do is go to fantasy football, something near and dear to your heart, and the FFPC, something equally near and dear to your heart, and the contest that is forthcoming. We want to go to Buffalo, take a look at the Bills wide receivers, and see if you can work through the fact that Josh Allen continues to run his club to success in the playoffs. Who is the receiver that he's going to rely on, or is it still basically anybody's guess? You know the numbers, so tell the fantasy players who they should put at receiver, not only for this weekend, who you think is going to win, and who you think is going to go forward with being that best receiver through the contest.
Is it the receivers or is it the tight ends? Because if you look at the numbers here, Knox and Kincaid right here, look at their yardage totals in the desert. A lot of times when you're doubting things, go ask our friends in the desert. They know a little bit more than we do sometimes on a lot of this stuff. It's amazing. Sometimes we have hunches, we have the cut of their jib and the eye test, but a lot of times the odds makers know a little bit more than us. And you look at the yardage totals for this for tomorrow's game. You got Shakir 52.5, but the next two on the list are the two tight ends, Knox and Kincaid. The one I would try to stay away from would probably be Brandon Cooks, because a little bit as far as a guy who can you really trust him in this spot? He's at 28.5 yards for tomorrow. But yeah, we've seen this act before with him. But for me in this game tomorrow for the Buffalo receivers, yeah, anybody can go on Shakir, but it's the two tight ends. And if you're looking for maybe a guy that's probably not going to be on many teams, it might very well be Dawson Knox coming in here. We've seen both these tight ends. We know that both these tight ends, Kincaid now, both of them, they had three. He had 3 catches last week. But yeah, I would look at the tight ends before I would receivers, and I would be looking down upon Brandon Cooks and up on both these tight ends.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. And I think you also make a great point about Dawson Knox, because if you are going to pivot off of James Cook, off of Josh Allen in this competition, I think most people would say, give me the young up-and-coming tight end. Well, Dalton Kincaid has been mostly miss rather than hit over the course of his career. And yet Josh Allen just keeps going back to Dawson Knox. Sometimes, especially if Buffalo loses this game, we could look at who is the Jalen Coker of this squad, right? Jalen Coker blew up last week. He was the Panther to own if you had him in the playoff challenge. There could be somebody like that in Buffalo, especially if the Bills are forced to pass in the fourth quarter to try to get back into the game. Knox is very, very interesting. Flip side of the ball.
Do we know the Coker owner's percentage from last weekend?
I can tell you right now. It was super
less than 2%.
Yeah, in the $200, the world famous the Granddaddy contest last week, Jalen Coker was owned in 28, out of 7,250 teams. That is 0.39% that Coker was owned. So crazy stuff. That's why this challenge is so much fun. So flip side of the ball tomorrow from Buffalo, Brad. Denver features R.J. Harvey in the backfield. We know that Buffalo has tightened up their defense over the last month, maybe month and a half, but that rush defense I would still not consider good. How likely is it that you see Harvey having a big game and running all over this Bills defense, especially considering that Denver probably wants to win this game with defense and running the football?
When Dobbins went down, I think 7 weeks before the end of the season, from that point on, you would assume this is Harvey's team. And yeah, he did get a multitude of the carries, and he's one of the mainly, I would say, 3 running backs right now where I would say, yeah, he's going to get more carries than anybody else. But he only averaged 3.7 yards a carry this season. Yeah, he had the touchdowns. He had the 12 touchdowns to make him fantasy relevant. But in a spot like this, the desert says 56.5 yards for him. If I'm looking to do anything here, I'm looking to go under that total. He's not a guy that I'm looking for Denver to play. And we talked about, rushing touchdowns for Denver in the last, since Dobbins went out. He had 6. Bo Nix had 5. So that should tell you a little bit about where these numbers are going with these two, with this running back, not getting the ball at the goal line. So, this is not a guy I'm looking to roster in your league here.
That's the most these matchups. It's hard to pick the one that I think is the most entertaining. I think perhaps because I feel more engaged with the team and I followed the players longer, the Niners game means a lot to me. I think it was about a 7.5 point line for the outcome, and I thought that was too many. I thought the game might be closer. We learned now that tight end Kittle for the Niners is not going to play. From a football perspective, I think that's a disaster for the Niners. From a fantasy perspective, I like the pass catching of the backup tight end Tongas, and I've always liked him, and he's been good in the red zone this year too. So but there's probably a beneficiary on this offense, Brad, that Kittle's not going to get his targets. Who's going to get them? I have a favorite, but there's no use me talking when we have Brad Taylor here. Who's it going to be, Brad? Who's the guy to play from the Niners?
Well, of course, conventional wisdom says it's Tongas because, let's just handcuff him. Let's just put the other guy in who does well when Kittle's out. But it's one of these two off receivers. If Pearsall or Jennings, one of these two guys, if Pearsall is healthy and it looks like he's going to be playing, I would go over the total in terms of yardage if you're looking at props. Those are the two guys, Pearsall and Jennings, that I'm definitely looking at here. Pearsall 29.5, Jennings 39.5. Those are two guys. If they get the play tomorrow, especially Pearsall, I am definitely looking to take one of those receivers. And more than McCaffrey or Tongas, I think one of those two receivers really come above what they've been doing with the more opportunities with Kittle being out here.
And Jennings has had those breakout games historically, Balky. He's had some 40-point games, and that's what you need in this contest.
You do, and if you end up getting that really vaults you to the at least to the top, not to the very top of the leaderboard, but near at a minimum near the top of the leaderboard, which is what you need. I will say the 2 games against Seattle this year, and this is a little bit misleading because I think Kittle played in the first one. 2 catches, 16 yards for Jennings, 4 catches for 35 yards in the game at the end of the season. But to Ferrell's point, I mean, he's popped off this year, 9 for 71 and a touch against the Rams. 6 for 71 and a touch against the Rams. He had that 5 catch for 89-yard performance against the Saints earlier this year. Found the end zone 9 times this year, did Juwan Jennings. So certainly there is some pop-off potential with Juwan Jennings, not only this week, but if the Niners keep moving on, they'll be trusting Jennings because Kittle won't be back for the remainder of the postseason. Okay, the other team in that game, Brad, is the Seattle Seahawks. Rather than wax poetic about how great the league's leading receiver, Jackson Smith-Njigba, is, let's focus in on the backfield here. If you are looking for a hard pivot off of JSN and you decide it's going to be a Seahawks running back, do you have an inkling of Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker, not only which one is better this week against San Francisco, but also moving on to the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl that the Seahawks are lucky enough to get that far?
I will ask you about the ownership of Charbonnet compared to Walker last week. Do you have that number on me? Because I think that's the big difference, the ownership numbers with these two guys in your contest.
It was very, very close between those two running backs last week, and both of them were super down. 2.1% for Charbonnet, 2.0% for Kenneth Walker. So basically, I'll narrow it down like this: out of 7,250 teams, Brad, 153 of them had Walker or had Charbonnet, beg your pardon, and 148 of them had Walker.
Wow.
That's very interesting to me, because you would think conventional wisdom would say, well, it's Walker because he's going to get more. But I think Charbonnet would be my play, especially if you're looking to maybe get some value. But when you say the roster spots are so even, it's kind of something where you're looking at it and say, wow, do I really get the value with Charbonnet over Walker here? Here's a spot where, it's half a dozen of the other and 6 of one. But, I think I would be taking Charbonnet going forward in this, mainly because I know that he's going to have a little bit more value, and quite possibly, maybe, he'll get a little bit extra in terms of you'll get some roster value with him. But, this is one where it's Charbonnet over Walker for me, but I think I might be in the split minority on that one.
Yeah.
We said that the 49ers would be okay with tight end from this fantasy perspective. I don't think that there's anyone that's going to supplement what Nico Collins did. I don't think you can replace Nico Collins. There's complementary players and receivers. There's good youth receivers. But for this contest, Brad, who's going to step up and help Stroud in a pass-catching aspect? Could it be the tight end who's had a quiet but productive, at least from our contest perspective, season? You still want to stick with tight ends here, or do you want to look somewhere else in that receiving core for a big game?
I don't think the odds makers know either, because if you look at the yardage totals, Kirk is 39.5, Schultz 39.5, Higgins 37.5, Hutchinson 30.5. I don't think they know what they're going to do, the odds makers, because everybody's right around the same number here. For my money, the value is on Hutchinson. If you're looking to play him long term, maybe that's with Houston getting a one with a one and out kind of situation here. But I think the value is on. You're going to get some value with Kirk, obviously. But I think Hutchinson would be the play that I would make to kind of be maybe under the radar and hope you get something out of this, because the desert's telling us they don't really know what's going to happen here, and I don't think I want to trust Schultz as much as I trust those Buffalo tight ends this week.
The rostership last week, and I know this is skewed because Nico Collins, was healthy. He was not concussed heading into this. But as far as the non-Collins receivers go for Houston, it was Jaden Higgins owned in 0.19%, and Christian Kirk, Xavier Hutchinson, and Jalen Noel combined to be rostered on exactly 0 teams in the FFPC Playoff Challenge this past week, which is crazy. I threw it up there before. I threw up the stat. I'll throw it up there again. More people rostered Buffalo's backup kicker, Matthew Wright, than rostered Christian Kirk.
Which apparently was a mistake.
Apparently it was a mistake, yeah.
Apparently was a mistake.
So
Captain Obvious, call me.
Right.
We all think we know these things. It's incredible. We all think going into these games, we all think we know. We don't know anything, and sometimes we really don't.
And that's what makes it so fun, because we can talk about this to death, and certainly we can kind of win on the margins. In fact, we'll talk more about that with you, Brad, later on. We can try to win on the margins as much as we can, but ultimately it's a wild team game played with a weird shaped ball. Crazy stuff happens all the time. Is crazy stuff going to happen in the New England backfield this coming weekend against these Texans? It's Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson that dominate touches back there. Henderson, the young, explosive player that I think a lot of people want to roster. But I'm almost wondering that with the usage that Ramondre Stevenson's seen, with who his head coach and who his offensive coordinator are, I wonder if after the Patriots postseason run is over, whether that's this weekend or maybe in February, we'll look back and say, gee, I didn't want to roster Ramondre Stevenson, but it turned out that was the guy I should have been rostering for the Patriots. Do you have a favorite in this backfield for this challenge, Brad?
We saw that game last week with the Patriots, and they were never behind in that game. Yet none of these running backs got double-digit carries. Nobody got more than 10 carries. What were they doing? Why were they not used a little bit more, these running backs? And if you look at a spot like this, you go to the desert, what do they say about yards from scrimmage here? Henderson, 51.5. Stevenson, 53.5. So I don't think they know what they're doing in this one either. Here's a spot where, for me, we saw Stevenson, 10 for 60 in that one, but 53 of those yards were, his 53 were second on the team to May last week. Here's a spot where, I think I'm going to take the Henderson, but it's a spot where not even the desert really knows what to do here. If you've got inside information on this one, I suggest going for it. But I'm just suggesting this one because I think maybe he'll get more goal line carries. But if you're looking for a receiver, Stevenson is definitely your guy.
There's a lot of questions. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Fair. I was going to ask you, are you Team Stevenson or Team Henderson in this?
It's impossible to figure out. If you think, and this is this great quarterback that throws the ball downfield, has such great downfield accuracy, I think that's where the opposition can be beat this weekend. And if they get ahead and they get some points up on them, whichever running back has the hot hand could get fed the ball, and they could separate. Henderson is the big play guy. Stevenson is the dependable player. I like Henderson better as an athlete, but Brad's right. This is too tough to call. So, all we're doing for the listeners is we're saying, hey, best guess. This stuff's really, we haven't come up with anything since Brad came in with the tight ends, and it just shows how vexing this situation is. But I'll tell you somebody that's not vexing. A team that's not vexing, the Los Angeles Rams. Brad, when we consider about who you want to start with the Rams, an old expression that you'll be familiar with, I would tell you, come on in, Brad, the water's fine, because it was mighty, mighty good with the Rams. Who's it going to be? Adams or Nakua? You think of Nakua, and one of the stats that I discovered this week is something you don't think about receivers. He has 400 plus yards after contact. This guy runs better than running backs. I love this. Adams down around the goal line. Fantastic. Is Adams a sneaky play because of his scoring possibilities? I think this team just rolls all over the Bears. And the point spread doesn't suggest that, but I suggest that. I think I know that. I think that's what I see happening here. What do you see?
I wish I saw that craps table over there so I could get down a field bet. That's
they got a craps table down there?
No, there's not a craps table down here.
No, I thought that was false advertising. Bonky, did you hear that? That was fake news emanating. It's fake news emanating from the VSiN studio. I'm shocked that
but we don't have the craps tables here yet. But the point is, if there was a field bet down there, I could guarantee you the water would be fine for me to jump in there on that one. I also would say, are we looking at the end of Davante Adams? Because we all remember the touchdowns. He got 14 of those this year. But we kind of saw this a couple years ago with Cooper Kupp as well. And, Davante Adams is only 33 years old, but he averaged 15 games this year, 4 catches, 57 yards. So it's not like, other than those 14 touchdowns, what has he really done for this team? I am down on Adams. His number here is to go 55.5 yards on this one. Yeah, you got the 14 touchdowns, but I'm looking to go under on him. It is Superfly, Nakua, or nobody in this one. So this is a spot. I don't think Davante Adams is the guy you want to trust here, just banking on those touchdowns that haven't done anything. He hasn't scored since November. So that's something to kind of look at with this guy.
Hey, fellas, check it out. We're in the second show of the year, and it's certainly not the league year. I don't know what show this is, Balky, number 50-something, whatever it is.
Yep.
Finally, Fenton has checked in. Brad, see, you bring out all the old school guys. Fenton jumps in here in uniform to make a commentary. He's going in with Stevenson. I don't get to ask questions about Colston, Loveland anymore, Brad, but Balky will do it for me.
Just real quick on Adams, before we get to Loveland. Dude had 13 targets last week, and pretty much I think the target share with Adams and Nakua combined last week was like 70-something%. So it's a highly concentrated passing game, and I don't think that changes against the Bears this week. 13 targets. He only catches 5 of them. And quite frankly, did not look all that great. I don't think he passed the eye test for me in that game. And I'm not saying the 8 targets that he missed were all his fault, but some of them were bad. And I wonder if he is actually playing a little bit hurt right now. I will say this, just to wrap up the Rams offense. There are people that are, I think, nervous about the Rams offense playing in this, and it's going to be very cold at Soldier Field. And they're nervous about these, Southern California boys coming into play in this. And I'm like, Stafford played in the NFC North for how many years? Devontae Adams played in Green Bay for how many years? Blake Corum, Kyron Williams, those guys played at Michigan and Notre Dame. Like, they've played in plenty of cold weather before. So I think the weather thing is a little bit overrated. And I think the leaky Chicago defense is going to help them out a little bit too as well. So I'm not all that concerned about. Now the Rams could lose that game, but I'm not all that concerned about the Rams not being able to put up points in that game. Okay, moving on to the Chicago offense here. Brad Taylor from the VSiN Studios in Franklin, Kentucky. The likelihood of Colston Loveland continuing this massive hot streak against the Rams, I'm hearing people talk about him being the tight end 3 in Dynasty and maybe in redraft leagues next year. Everything he has done over the course of the last 3 or 4 weeks keeps moving him up people's draft boards for 2026, Brad. Is this going to continue against the Rams and perhaps maybe even the NFC Championship game, or dare I say the Super Bowl as well?
I thank you for answering that. That was going to be my question. Where did you guys see Loveland going next year in these drafts? Because I was thinking off the top of my head, this is a top 5 tight end going in the next year. And the fact that you are saying this is top 3, well, it makes me feel a little better about what I'm thinking here. Last 11 games, he's averaged 5 for 67 here. And the Bears have gotten 21 touchdowns in those 11 games, and he's got 6 of them. So Colston Loveland is he is a guy right now. His over-under the desert, 57.5. I do not like going over on a lot of players. Heck, I'm looking to go under on Puka Nacua, 101 yards for tomorrow. Yeah. But here's a guy in Loveland. This might be a guy that I'm looking to go over. The Rams allowed 92 catches and 7 touchdowns to tight ends this year. It's a little worse than average, but it's not the worst, but it's worse than average. Yeah, I'm going over on Colston Loveland. A good tight end pickup for your league.
I love that. Jake Valich, he got his, he was there first, Paul. He was the first guy that really, really was behind Loveland, one of our fine players. And when Brad Taylor returns to the friendly confines of Caesar, Southern Indiana for the KFFSC draft, you'll get to meet some of these cats. Balky, do you remember the big payback league where Brad got a standing ovation when we were in the 17th round and he did not have a quarterback yet? And he selected a kicker before his quarterback, and there was a huge ovation for the contrarian. So the part of the question that I now come with, that I know we're going to get brilliance from, is who is the contrarian play? Who do you not need in your roster? Who are guys going to be rostering at big numbers? And you don't want to put him in your roster in this contest. You've already talked about some guys that you don't want to have. Like, for instance, Adams would have been a great answer to this question, but we've already burned that one. So now you're going to have to come with something fresh, Brad Taylor. And then who's a guy that you just can't leave out? It's not going to happen for you. I think it's JSN. Who do you think it is?
I think the guy this week, we talked about him, is Brandon Cooks. I think he's getting a lot more publicity and a lot more credit that he's deserving. Then those numbers are going to go to those tight ends, Knox and Kincaid. That's where I'm banking on. A guy I don't want, Brandon Cooks, getting some publicity this week. That's a guy I don't want. A guy I do want, maybe is a kind of sleeper dark horse, either one of those San Francisco receivers. So when I say either one of them, either Pearsall or Jennings, if Pearsall is healthy, go with him. If it's not, it's Jennings, because those Kittle numbers have to go somewhere. And you could say Tongas all you want to, but those 2 receivers are going to be the ones who are going to pick up the money for those. But if you're just looking for the chalky McChalkerson play that'll get you somewhere in this league, I don't know about you guys, But it's if you think Buffalo is going to go all the way, it's got to be Josh Allen. That is as chalky as it goes. That is as square as it gets, as we like to say. That's the one guy where if you think Buffalo is going to win this thing, that's the one guy you probably need.
Well, let's roll that back to this game. Do you think Buffalo is going to win this game?
I'm going with Denver. And this is a market game because we saw Buffalo.
See, that's what he does, Balky. That's exactly what he does. And so you can now write it down that Denver is going to win. You just go to the sports book. Yeah, Denver.
Remember, when you're right 53% of the time, you're wrong 47% of the time. Never forget that. But
that's not you.
What you say? Oh, I wish it would get more than 53%. I wouldn't be sitting here right now, Ferrell. I'd be on my yacht somewhere out in the ocean. But
brother, you're in a place more suited for you than any type of luxury living on a yacht. That's not.
I don't know about that. I'll take the yacht. I love it here, but you got to give me the yacht. I'll take that. But it's the dog to favorite line move, especially this time of year when you see the money on one side, which is on Buffalo. Yet the line moves the other way, the reverse line move, and it's become a dog, it's become the favorite, and vice versa. That's the market, and the sharps telling me that's a play for Denver.
Just going back to the Niners here real quick, Ricky Pearsall did not practice at all heading into the game last week against Philadelphia. This week he's gotten in a limited practice every day. He's officially listed as questionable. He told the press that in that big high-scoring Bears game, in week 17, he got tackled and landed right on his knee. And he said he can't take tackles like that right now. He said he's got to adjust the way he plays a little bit, which is not what you want to hear. But this is an all hands on deck situation. All hands except for George Kittle's hands, who will not be playing this week. So that's what we're looking at with Pearsall. The Dizzle chiming in. Pearsall is never healthy. It certainly seems that way right now. So it could be a big Jennings week. I want to go back just real quick, Brad, before our final question for you. I think Fenton had a question here. Yeah, I'll throw it up on the screen right now. He wants to know which tight end goes big this week for the Rams. So we've been talking about Puka Nacua. We've been talking about Williams, Corum, Devontae Adams. We had a conversation about what if you wanted to do the Uber pivot and move to a Rams tight end in this tight end premium scoring format that the FFPC Playoff Challenge 2 is. Do you have an inkling on which Rams tight end you'd want to put a chip on, not only this weekend, but maybe going forward in the postseason, Brad?
Conventional wisdom once again says it's Higbee, right? Because we've heard that name and he had a decent week last week. But I don't think there's much difference in either one of these tight ends for the Rams. Higbee, his number in the desert right now is 22.5 to kind of put his numbers up there in this one. So, yeah, is that something that is going to make or break your team? I'm not so sure. But, yeah, here's a spot where I think maybe, just maybe, if you're looking to get maybe somebody off the radar, Parkinson might be your guy. And the spot where he's not getting as many yards in terms of what the desert's saying, but the desert is also saying, yeah, he's getting 20.5 yards here in the desert is Parkinson. So not
Parkinson's an all-time Balky favorite too.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say all time, but maybe current. Maybe he is all time. I don't know.
He's all time.
Brad, we also have another question from the Dizzle, Dave Gerzak. Do you remember who you ended up with at quarterback in that big payback league where you took a kicker before him? I'd also be curious to know who the kicker was, if you remember.
I can't go back. Heck, I can't remember what I had for lunch today. Much less.
I think it was an interesting waiver wire year for Brad.
Oh, I'm sure it was. But when it got in those leagues, it's because everybody there was sharp. I mean, it wasn't like you had any squares in that league. Everybody was so sharp. So why go with the conventional wisdom and go right down the line, picking running backs and receivers? Mix it up and just wait for quarterbacks and just do something different because – I'm not going to follow the rest of the sheep to the slaughterhouse. I mean, if you're, so you're going to lose a lot, but every once in a while you'll pop that winner in, and that'll do it for you. But I mean, it's when it comes to fantasy football. I mean, I love fantasy football just like you guys do, but yeah, it's following the rest of the sheep sometimes does not equal winning, and sometimes being different does. But sometimes is the key word there.
So I think the other thing I wanted to bring up here is before we let you get on and enjoy the rest of your evening here, Brad, side hustle, how squares like us in the real world can improve our bottom line and compete with the sharps in the world of sports gambling. This book has been out for about 2.5 years or so, available on Amazon. Give our viewers and our listeners a taste of what is in this book.
Well, it miraculously, the timing, it came out right when sports gambling became legal in Kentucky. It was amazing how that happened. But what we were trying to do is kind of teach the squares like us, try to figure out what makes the sharps, what makes them sharp. What do they do differently than us? And, it's a lot of things about it's not always most important to pick winners. We mismanage our money. We let emotions take over our gambling. It's not always the kind of thing where, just picking people can get 53% winners for a period of time and still lose money because they're not betting the right way and playing parlays. Fool's gold is the parlays. And but people are always infatuated by it. So it's just trying little tidbits and systems, that I like to play, especially in the NFL too. The windy unders, division dogs, things like that. Things that have worked over decades that we kind of put in the book, and little tricks that the sharps do that we need to learn to do better because it's very hard. This sports gambling thing is very difficult to do long term.
And Balky, in all walks of life now, there's proposition plays on all types of things. Like, for instance, I have a big bet on the fact that I will receive an autographed copy of the book delivered to my home. The over and under is 3 years, and I had the under, but I'm still waiting to cash that ticket, Balky. Yeah. And probably it's probably the same cost to send two as it is one. Balky is spelled Bafky. So Brad, just any time. But we want to be proponents of that book, but we require that for. I've got a spot in there on my bookshelf for it. I cleared it out.
Yeah, in your comic book section, is that what you're going to say?
No, sir. It's going to sit. It's going to sit right next to my autographed copy of the great Jim Murray's from the LA Times, the contributions that he made to that paper, and that I've got a book that breaks down some of his best columns, and you're going right next to him. So there's a nice place waiting for you. Balky's going to put his up the next picture of that Seinfeld back there.
Yeah,
that's where
right.
He's going to put his. So
I gotta redo my background. It doesn't look nearly as cool as Brad's. The Last of the Best, a 1998 book about Jim Murray, or with all Jim Murray's columns. So there you go, Ferrell. The name of the book for Brad is Side Hustle. Get it now, Amazon.com. I got the link up on the screen. You could just simply go on Amazon, search Side Hustle Brad Taylor. You'll find it there as well. And just enjoy sports gambling a little bit more, thanks to one Mr. Taylor, the VSiN host and analyst who was good enough to grace us with his presence tonight. And thank you so much for giving your insight, not only on the divisional games, but the rest of the way. We'll get you out the door, Brad, with a Super Bowl prediction. Do you have a feeling on which teams are going to meet for all the marbles come February?
Well, when I talked to Ferrell last week, I said Rams and Jacksonville, and I said get the Jacksonville receiver as a big dark horse. So once again, it tells you that we don't know what we're talking about.
He scored well, and in that tournament, you had to have a player from every team. So you didn't, Balky, you didn't.
But it's still, for me, it's still Rams. It's going to be Rams and Bills for me, or excuse me, Rams and Broncos for me. And that would be the thing you could get right now. But I think that's it's about 14-1 for the actual exact to get to the Super Bowl. So that's what I would say. But once again, remember, when you're right 53% of the time, you're wrong 47% of the time. And even more so in future bets. So, yeah, it's another thing altogether.
Brad, we will continue to watch your career blow up. We will listen to you. We will watch you at VSiN, of course. Follow you on the X at Bottom Line Lex. Thank you so much. Enjoy the games tomorrow. Don't be a stranger. We'll talk with you again soon.
Thank you guys so much. I would not be sitting here right now if it was not for one Ferrell Elliott. So I am grateful to him. That's a true story. That's an absolute true story. I would not be sitting here right now. So thank you, Ferrell. And guys, as always, until the next time, may the winners be yours. Thank you, fellas. So much, all the best to you. Thank you.
All the best to you as well. Thank you, Brad Taylor, ladies and gentlemen. Hopping aboard tonight, the VSiN host and analyst. Bottom Line Lex, get his book, Side Hustle, by one Brad Taylor on Amazon.com. Good stuff from Brad tonight. Always good stuff. Always love chopping it up with Brad. And it's funny, Ferrell, you bring up that big payback story. I do remember, because I wasn't in that draft, but the draft I was in had gotten over with. or was getting close to being the end. And I just saw the big applause at the table over at the big payback table. I'm like, what the hell's going on over there? And then I found out that he took a kicker before quarterback. I'm like, that is my guy right there. That is
people
awesome.
just roared with Taylor's success.
Ferrell, let's get to a few emails tonight.
Nope.
I think they're all playoff. They're all playoff challenge ones. Mike in Anderson, North Carolina leads off tonight. What's up, guys? Any receivers not named Cortland Sutton worth using in the playoff challenge number 2? And before everybody says, and Mike, thank you for the email. Before everybody says, well, why would you consider a non-Broncos or non-Cortland Sutton Broncos receiver? I have 4 words for you. Jalen Coker, Christian Kirk. That's why we talk about these receivers. There's Mims, there's Bryant, there's Franklin. Obviously, Sutton is going to be the highest owned guy. Ferrell, is there any value in any one of these other 3 Broncos receivers in an 8-team lineup this weekend?
My favorite has been the one that I've counted on throughout the year. Let's go with Franklin. That's who I like.
Franklin is probably the guy I would choose. It's hard to go with the rookie, and then Marvin Mims just not involved enough. He wasn't owned at all in any of the $200, the $500K lineups last week. Pat Bryant, 0.14. Troy Franklin was 0.63. So he had the highest, he was the highest owned Broncos receiver, not named Cortland Sutton. I think that's who I'd go with as well. You have some big play potential. There's also a decent floor there, and you just hope that if the Broncos keep advancing, somehow he does find his way into the end zone a couple of times, and it might make all the difference in the world in cashing that $100,000 grand prize. Moving on to our next email, we go to Garfield Heights, Ohio. Dennis is there. And he writes, if Seattle gets to the bowl, how good of a play is Sam Darnold if everyone else is rostering JSN? Thanks so much. We talked about this earlier, Ferrell. I'm a weak man. I don't know if I could do it. But certainly if my team is within striking distance on Super Bowl Sunday and seemingly everybody has Jackson Smith and Jigba in front of me, but I'm the only one with Sam Darnold, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of like, you know, they do have Cooper Kupp. They do have the running backs. They do have A.J. Barner. It is possible for Darnold to throw touchdowns, not to Smith and Jigba. There is something to be said for that. If you're doing one lineup, first of all, don't do one lineup. Do multiple. It's much more fun. And if you're doing multiples, I was talking with Pat Fitzmaurice about this last night. He said, yeah, if I'm doing multiple lineups in this challenge, Darnold is going to be on one or two. I think Ken Ford said the same thing on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown on Tuesday. That you got to find a way. If you're doing multiple lineups, if Seattle gets all the way there, you're going to want to have Darnold on a couple of these lineups. Not a lot, but you want that. You want a dog in that fight, and Darnold could be that dog.
You want a chance to have that quarterback in the Super Bowl. You look at this opponent, and what JSN does best is to really what the Niners have the most trouble with. And so big strikes downfield, catching the ball in stride. There's a lot of confusion in that secondary from time to time. There's better play. One of the linebackers is coming back. There's better play. Those defensive tackles are good play. But the secondary, man, and I think JSN just has another big game. And it all runs through him, and the quarterback now who's somewhat compromised physically. I think that if you have a Seattle player, which you will, it needs to be JSN.
The lineups last week in the 500K, 9 out of every 10 lineups featured Smith and Jigba in them. So certainly they're. And you do. I said this. I talked with Harshal Sheth about this. I talked with Ken Ford about this the last couple of weeks. Guys who have cashed in the divisional round, guys who have cashed and won the whole playoff challenge. In Sheth's case, they said you got to eat chalk on most of your lineup. It's just that 1 or 2, maybe 3 spots that you got to hit on the right pivots, and that's how you win the big money. Maybe Smith and Jigba is just a guy that you put in your lineup. You hope for the best, and you move on and try to find pivots elsewhere. Let's move on to New England. Yeah, we're talking Patriots here with one Jim in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Who's the better play in the playoff challenge 2 for New England? Stephon Diggs or Hunter Henry? You might be surprised to know that in the 500K challenge last week, ownership looked like 19% for Stephon Diggs, and for one Hunter Henry, tight end premium, he was at 16%. So the FFPC players last week said that Diggs is a slight favorite. Ferrell, do you agree with them in this challenge this week? Should Diggs be the guy over Henry?
I like several of the tight ends in this challenge, but Henry is the touchdown dependent player. If it was a one-game thing, I'm going with Diggs. Since I expect this team to continue to win, I'm going with Henry. So if you think that the Patriots are one more game and done, I think Diggs should be your player. But if you think the Pats have the long game here to get to the Super Bowl, I think you should go with Henry.
Henry caught 60 balls this year, so he's not just some pivot slouch we're going to. Like there's a reason that he's significant in not only last week's challenge but this week's challenge as well.
Ever since the tight end whisperer came on the show and whispered Henry, his entire career has blossomed again.
Yes. You said you like several tight ends in the challenge. I could think of 3 I like. Who else do you like? I would say Loveland, Schultz, and Henry. What are there any other guys that you like besides those 3?
Well, I like Tongas. And
Tongas,
I like Tongas.
Okay.
I like your guy from the Rams as well.
Parkinson. Yeah, I could see that as well. And again, I think that you don't want to tie with 30 some other people in this. You want to be different, and it's more fun to have this whole grand prize all to yourself. And maybe Parkinson's on the winning line. There's going to be one player on this winning lineup that will just be scratching our heads like, how the heck did that guy come up with this person?
And no one had Coker. No one had Coker.
No one had Kirk. People had Coker, but very few people had Coker.
No one had
Kirk. Yeah. Final email here. We'll go back to the Rams for this email, which is from Charlie in Irvine, California. Hello, hsffhour. To try and be different, would you guys recommend I use Blake Corum instead of Kyron Williams or any other Ram? Appreciate you. That is Charlie in Irvine, California. We appreciate you, Charlie. Ferrell, I think this is interesting because most people, if I look at the ownership percentage for the Rams last week, Matthew Stafford came in at 11%. That was second on the Rams next to Puka Nacua, who came in at 75%. You look at the running backs, Kyron Williams was at 7%, Blake Corum 0.2%, knowing that Corum is really, really eating into the catches, the touches, and sometimes the carries inside the 10-yard line. I wonder if Corum makes for, again, if you're filling out multiple lineups, I wonder if Corum should be on one of your lineups just because he could be scoring a few touchdowns, and the Rams have the potential to play 3 games in this challenge as well.
Possible, but I'm going to stick with Kyron. That's how I would play it. But yes, now I'm going to have to play a lot of teams to get to Corum.
Listen, I'm going to tell you that you want to play a lot of teams. We have a lot of teams available in this right now. We have still 475 teams left in the $200 version. The $35 version features 936 teams left. They've already starting to fly here. So I would definitely get in while you can. And I'm speaking to Ferrell, and I'm speaking to everybody here in the viewing and listening audience to register for the playoff challenge too. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to enhance your enjoyment of the divisional playoff. And I always say, even if it was a bad season, it could still be a great season if you cash this 100K. Always a great show when I can hang out with my buddy Ferrell Elliott from the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. KFFSC.com is where to go. Check it out with all the leagues that are open and will be opening soon there as well. You want to make it the year of KFFSC. Hang out with myself and Ferrell in Louisville. Hang out with Ferrell in Cincinnati. Northern Kentucky this year, right? Northern Kentucky, yeah. Northern Kentucky as well the week before. It's going to be a banner year for the KFFSC. And if you can't make it, play online, KFFSC.com. Ferrell, enjoy the divisional games this weekend. Thanks so much for hopping on, and we'll talk with you again next Friday.
Thank you, Bob.
You got it. Ferrell Elliott, the co-host with the most, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, joining me tonight. I want to thank him, Ferrell Elliott. I want to thank Brad Taylor, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and of course, each and every one of you for hopping aboard tonight. We will be back next Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern. We will be speaking with the 2025 FFPC Main Event $200,000 runner-up, Waleed Maqbul. He returns to the show. He was just on in August. I got to find out when he drafted this team. He might have drafted this team right after he came on the show. I don't know. We'll have to talk about that. But that's going to be a lot of fun as we talk with Waleed next week. Okay. The 10-time FFPC League champion and 2021 FFPC Main Event runner-up Ken Ford was on the season finale of the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown this past Tuesday. In case you missed it, watch it anywhere you can get the FFPC socials, YouTube, Facebook, X, whatever. It's also in the RotoViz podcast feed if you want to listen to it there, or anywhere you get your podcast. So we are now not going weekly anymore until the season starts. The RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown will still continue this non-playing season, but we will go live the first Tuesday of every month until September when we resume weekly. So Tuesday, February 3rd, the HSLD will go live again. Insider Access was awesome this past Thursday night. Better Sports Network or the FFPC socials if you missed it. Fantasy Pros Pat Fitzmaurice and I put together a couple of lineups for the $100,000 FFPC Playoff Challenge 2. We'll be back this Thursday again for 2 full hours starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Rotoballer's Frank Amarante will join me for that program. We'll take a look at the playoffs, and most importantly, we'll be talking best ball and getting you going on your 2026 drafting season. It's going to be a lot of fun. What is also a lot of fun is the FFPC Playoff Challenge 2. There's no draft, no salary cap, no convoluted rules. You are basically picking 8 players, 1 player per NFL team, and then locking those players in at kickoff at 4:30 Eastern Time tomorrow when the Bills and Broncos kick off. And then you don't have to do anything. You just watch your players play and climb up the leaderboard. $100,000 grand prize is available to you with a $200 entry fee. You can also enter for $35 and be eligible for a $25,000 grand prize as well. Grand prize as well. 1 player per NFL team. Register now. myffpc.com. That's myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be Thursday night, 7 p.m. FFPC Insider Access, myself and Frank Amarante. Register for the FFPC Playoff Challenge 2. May the ball bounce your way this weekend. Thank you so much for listening, streaming, watching, downloading. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
I will let everybody know that while the Playoff Challenge 2, where we're at right now, was not where we're at for last week, we are actually significantly ahead of where we were last year too. So don't be a wish I had. I brought this up on last night's show. Sean Siegel, Tom Kelly from RotoViz, they planned on spending their Saturday morning putting together some Playoff Challenge lineups. It was already sold out by the time they looked at it. So register your teams now, get those entries in your My Teams page. Worry about the lineup before kickoff, but get those teams now to make sure you're not left out in the cold. Somebody's got to win 100K. Why not have it be you? Good luck, everybody, in all of your lineups and in the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge as well. We'll talk with you again next Thursday and Friday. Be good, everybody.